All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I did mention to the folks that are here live with us that we are going to be using a block today. So if you're joining us on the recording, if you want to pause and go get a block, or if you have a book that's the shape of the block, if you don't want to use one, it's okay, but just we are going to be referring to it a fair amount today. So have that handy. And we're going to start out, if you are okay with starting out in a reclined position, we're going to start out reclined. If you prefer to be seated, as always, do what's right for you. And find a spot that you can settle into just for the next few moments while we practice a bit of mindfulness, bringing the attention to the breath. Letting go of whatever you were doing before, whatever needs to be done later. Circling this spot for yourself, this time, this moment. And a great way to come into the present moment is to focus on the senses. Focusing on the sensation of the body breathing. Perhaps noticing the sensation of the body making contact with the floor. And taking a few rounds of breath here. Drawing the attention to this present moment. And then, if possible, as a shared intention for the practice today, noticing if there's anything that you can let go of that's not serving you super well in this moment, whether it be judgment, whether it be stress, whether it be tightness. See if there's any amount of letting go that can occur. And then inviting in anything that might serve you a little bit better, whether it be kindness, compassion, non-judgment, softening. And taking another breath or two with that intention. Then we'll grab a hold of our blocks and take the block and just place it between the two thighs. We'll start out nice and easy this morning. If you don't have one, or if you're using something other than a block, go ahead and either imagine that there's something there or use whatever prop it is that you have. And taking the feet, so they're just a little ways away from the glutes, firmly rooted on the mat. Shoulder blades connected with the mat, neck is long, and the low back is neutral, so you're not forcing it down, but you're not overly arching the low back either, nice and neutral. And as you exhale, give that block a little squeeze and feel the low abdominal muscles engage. And as you inhale, release. Subtle movement here, exhaling to squeeze, inhaling to release. Taking that at your own pace, and see if you can isolate that sensation more to the low body. So don't bring that squeeze into the shoulders too much. Keep that nice and easy. Taking a few more rounds of that here. And then we'll bring those legs up so that the knees are stacked on top of the hips. Shoulders again rooted down onto the mat. Low back is connected pretty much to the mat, but not forcefully so. All sides of the back body connected. And then again, coming back into that squeezing of the block on the exhale. And inhale, release. Taking that a few more times at your own pace, starting to wake up the low belly, which we use a lot for our yoga practice. And as you do that, letting go of tension in the jaw and in the face, and the shoulders. And then we'll add on again. So keeping the legs in the same configuration so that the shins are parallel towards the ceiling and you've got that same angle with the legs. We're going to lower within your range of motion and then lift. So what I mean is you don't want to let the shins go kind of floppy and just lower and lift, but really making it a purposeful movement so that you're keeping that same angle. You're just taking the hinge at the hip, lowering and lifting. Making sure strain is out of the low back. Maybe experimenting with taking that a little lower. Finding that good range of motion for you. Of course, you can take pauses whenever you want. And then coming back up to neutral, we'll bring the arms to a T here and take the legs a little bit over towards the right, continuing to have that kind of moderate to light squeeze of the block, and then over towards the left. Waking up the oblique muscles. And again, taking pauses as needed. Shoulder blades stay pretty well rooted. That opposite shoulder may come off the mat a little. Focus here is on the oblique muscles more so than getting a stretch. We'll get the stretch later. Right now we're working on strengthening through the core, creating stability. And then go ahead, the next time you pass through center, you can remove the block, perhaps hug the knees in towards the chest, hug the chin in towards the knees, come into a little ball, stretching out the low back, take any movements you'd like to take here, a little rock side to side if you'd like. And then bringing the feet about mat width distance, so a little bit wider here than hip width distance. And we'll begin to windshield wiper the legs, taking them over towards the right and over towards the left. Just a time or two. And then we'll pause with legs over towards the right. And we'll take our right ankle and just set it on top of the left knee to encourage that stretch to the left side of the body. Here, arms can reach overhead and you can take the right hand to the left wrist. So not overhead, like above the head towards the ceiling, but overhead above you, towards the top of the mat. Just to clarify, getting a stretch to the left side of the body. Maybe a little gentle pull on that left wrist, lengthening all the way from the fingertips down the side body, down towards the left knee. The whole side is stretching. And then coming back to center, you can release the clasp and sway the legs over towards the left side now. You can reach the arms up towards the top of the mat. Take the left hand now towards the right wrist with a little pull, and then stack that left ankle on top of the right knee. If that feels like a little bit too much with the stacking of the ankle, you don't have to do that. Anything that feels like a little too much throughout the practice or not quite enough throughout the practice, feel liberated to modify that. Another breath or two here, getting that big stretch through the whole right side of the body now. And then releasing the arms down, releasing the legs down, and we'll make our way up to a seated position. We can cross the legs here. Sit up nice and tall, lengthen through the side waist, and then take some circles in one direction. And some circles in the other direction. And coming back to center, we'll take the feet together. And hands can come to the toes if you'd like. They could come towards the ankles if you'd like. Knees are nice and open. And again, sitting up tall here, taking some circles. Just rocking and rolling from one hip bone to the other, kind of circling around the pelvis, feeling that in the upper back, the core. And then switching directions, shoulders move, just loosening up. Eyes can be closed or open. And coming back to center, you can take that left elbow and kind of tuck it in towards the crease of the leg, and then reach the right arm up and up, up and over for a side stretch. Rooting down through that right hip, reaching through the right fingertips, softening through the face, and exhaling, coming back to center, inhaling, switching sides. Reaching those left fingertips up. Gaze is wherever is comfortable for you. Rooting down through the left sits bone. Releasing from that, we'll take the hands behind us, lift the chest here, draw the knees a little further apart, draw the shoulder blades closer together. Take a breath or two here. Then if you want, you could elevate, lifting up off of the hips, getting a deeper stretch through the front body if that's right for you. And releasing down as you're ready, drawing the legs back towards one another, scooping everything in towards center, and again, sitting up nice and tall. I'll turn this way so you can see a little bit better. Sitting up nice and tall. We'll take that left hand and wrap it around the knees, take the right hand behind and take a twist, opening up through the chest. Coming back to center and switching sides, getting that length through the spine, sitting up nice and tall as you twist. And exhaling back to center, we'll make our way up to a standing position. So again, we're going to use the block. We'll be referring to that a bit throughout class today. We're going to take that block and place it between the two thighs. Feet are about hip width distance apart. And working on our standing mountain pose, we're going to start from the bottom up today. So rooting down through the feet, all sides of the feet down on the mat. Just a tiny bit of softness through the knees. And we're going to give that block a bit of a squeeze here. Tailbone reaches down towards the floor. I'm going to do a few movements from this position. One of the things with yoga and with mountain pose specifically, they say mountain pose is the foundation of all of the yoga poses. But one of the things about it is that it is a kind of starting from the bottom up, rooting down through the low body and finding some lift through the upper body. So continuing to squeeze that block, you can take your left hand to your hip, or you can take both hands up overhead. We'll grab the we'll take the left hand to reach up to the right wrist and then bend over towards the left. So squeezing that block will just give you a little bit more of a firm foundation, rooting down through the feet actively, finding a lift, a rotation up with the right rib cage. And then coming back to center, switching the clasp, reaching over now towards the right, but continuing to give that block a little squeeze to encourage that firm foundation. We have that firm foundation, then we get a little bit of a kind of a better, more solid stretch through the upper body. And then coming back to center, releasing the hands, taking the hands to the low back to protect the low back, and then lifting through the chest. Releasing from that. A couple more things here with the mountain pose. We're going to move up towards the upper body now. So starting to just take the block to the chest, kind of to the mid ribs. And it's not a huge lift through the chest, but we're keeping that foundation that we had in the low body. So imagining that we're still squeezing that block for our solid foundation, but then also finding that bit of a lift through the chest. Not forcefully so. And then drawing the shoulder blades just a little bit closer together. Lengthening through the neck, through the crown of the head. Continuing to have that action of the tailbone pulling down towards the floor as you lift the chest. Getting some length. And then final step for upward mountain, taking the arms up overhead. So incorporating everything that we just did, the plugging down of the feet, that sense of drawing the thigh bones towards one another, giving ourselves a little squeeze, giving the low belly a little squeeze, a pulling in, tailbone reaches down towards the floor, slight lift of the chest, and then arms can reach overhead. So we'll be working with that a little bit more throughout the practice today. For now, you can set that block down up towards the top of the mat, whichever side you decide to have it as the top of the mat, you can set the block down. And we'll inhale, reach the arms up. And as you exhale, hinging at the hips, folding forward. On our next inhale, find that halfway lift to lengthen, and you can still think a bit about having that block between the two thighs. Lengthening the crown of the head, finding that little openness or lift through the chest. And then exhale, soft knees, fold forward. We're going to step the right leg back into a lunge position. And then go ahead and take your block up with you as you come into standing lunge, if this feels safe for you. If you want to have a hand available or both hands available to grab onto something, that's totally fine if you don't want to use the block too. So from here, just that slight sense of pressing the chest open, getting a little more openness through the chest, not, forcing it open, not a deep back bend, but just a sense of kind of openness through the chest, length through the crown of the head. That right heel is reaching back, left knee is stacked on top of left ankle. And then arms could reach up here if you'd like. You can continue to hold the block. And exhale, bringing the block back towards center. And imagine that you've got like almost a giant block that you're hugging between your legs. So you're drawing everything in towards center. So it's kind of squeezing that right leg forward, squeezing the left leg back, hugging everything in, block at the chest. And then we're going to take a slight twist over towards the left, over towards that front knee. Finding stability here, continuing to keep the low body, the core engaged. Just a small twist, don't expect to go too far. And then exhaling back to center, you can take that block down towards the floor. Right hand is planted, and then you can reach that left arm up towards the sky. Coming into a simple twist now. Continuing to hug the thighs inward for our foundation. And then exhaling, coming back to center. We're going to take now the left foot back to meet the right as we come into downward facing dog, pedaling out the feet here. You could always take child's pose instead of down dog. You could always take yourself down onto your belly for windshield wiper legs if you prefer that. Possibly shaking the head no here, letting go of tension, letting go of anything that's not serving you right now. And encouraging things that are a little bit more supportive. And from here, we'll come into plank position. You can be on the knees or not. Belly sucks in or pulls in, strong core, whether you're on the knees or not. And then feel free to come down to the knees as we lower all the way down to the belly. As an option here, just come over onto your side, place that block between the two thighs, just so that there's room, that it's kind of back from the fronts of the thighs, so there's room to come over onto your belly. From here, squeezing that block, reaching the tailbone back towards the heels, reaching the chest forward, and then lifting up into a small cobra. Just noticing that sensation of having really engaged leg muscles as you lift the chest, pressing the pubic bone and the frontal hip points down onto the mat. And then exhaling, releasing from that. Taking your arms to your sides now, palms of the hands up towards the sky, and then inhaling into a half locust. Again, squeezing the block, drawing shoulder blades towards one another. And exhale, release down from that. You can grab your block, place it back up at the top of the mat. You can stay down on your belly for windshield wiper legs. You could press back to child's pose, or you could press back to downward facing dog. Maybe pedaling out the feet a little bit, finding that hinge at the hips, releasing the neck and the jaw. If you'd like to take your transition by coming to all fours, please feel free to do that. We're going to scoop that right foot forward between the two hands. And then again, either your real or your imaginary block, coming up to standing lunge position. Hips are pretty square, isometrically drawing the thighs towards one another, drawing the feet towards one another. Outer hips hug in, and we've got that block at the chest. So just a slight lift, not a deep back bend, but a slight lift of the chest, very subtle. Shoulders are relaxed down and away from the ears, but we're not forcing anything, just kind of checking in with yourself. It's not forced, just subtle. And then continuing to squeeze the outer hips in, squeezing the thighs and feet towards one another as if you had a giant block between the thighs for stability. We're going to take that slight twist over towards the right now. Continuing to keep that upright posture. In the upper body, another breath here. And exhaling back to center. You can take that block down towards the mat. If you'd like, left hand on the block, right arm reaches up towards the sky, taking a twist towards the right, expanding through the chest. And exhaling, releasing back to center and scooping left foot forward to meet the right. Inhale for your halfway lift. And then exhale, folding back in. You can take, if you like, you can take hands and fold them, lace them at the back of the head, elongate the neck a little bit, coming into a restful forward fold, perhaps take a sway of the torso side to side. And releasing from that. And we'll come all the way up to standing, reaching the arms up and exhaling, coming back to center. From here, again, taking the block, placing it between the two thighs, and we'll exhale, come down into chair pose. And from here, elongating through the spine and exhaling, taking a twist over towards the left, hugging the thighs in. Elongating through the crown of the head. This is a nice way to make it so that that right knee doesn't shift forward from the left. Inhale, center, and exhale, switch sides. If you prefer, you can have your hands at a chair, you can have your hands on the wall, you can do what you need to do for balance. And we'll inhale, come all the way back up to standing. Grab a hold of the block. We're going to do one more sun salutation here. So from here, we're going to step the left foot back into a lunge position. And then from this lunge position, we're going to take almost like a figure 8. And I'll face you so you can see kind of what I'm doing. I'll come back the other way in a second, but we can take this kind of almost like a figure 8 here, working on the balance. So that's optional. Just a way to engage the core. A way to work on our balance a little bit more. You can switch directions if you want to, or stay with the same way you were going. Maybe a little buoyancy through the low body. And then coming back through to center. Taking that block down to the mat, and we'll step the right foot back to meet the left, coming through to plank position on the knees or not, and lower all the way down to the mat. Block is right here. So hands can give that block just a little bit of a squeeze. You can take it between the two hands, thumbs facing up towards the sky, and then use that action of squeezing the block, pulling the elbows back, pulling the chest forward to come into Sphinx pose. Neck is long on all sides, and maybe bringing in that muscle memory, just a little bit of the thighs squeezing in towards one another. Another breath or two here. And then releasing from that, you can press back into child's pose, come into downward facing dog, or maybe take those windshield wiper legs on the belly. Checking in with yourself, just kind of doing what feels best here. Taking some nice deep breaths, checking back in with your intention, checking in with your thoughts. They're serving you in this moment. And then we'll meet in downward facing dog. We'll step that left foot forward, so it should be that opposite foot forward. You can come to all fours for the transition if you'd like. And then we'll make our way up to that standing lunge position. So again, feel free to kind of find that buoyancy in the low body. And bring in that figure 8. Drawing that figure 8 with the block, working the oblique muscles, finding that sense of the legs drawing isometrically in towards one another to help with balance. Maybe taking it another time or two, just doing your best. If you need to tap the wall or have one hand on the chair, definitely do that. Do what's best for you. And then as you're ready, you can set that block down, Make your way forward for your halfway lift. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Crown of the head reaches forward. Long torso, both on right and left side of the body. And then exhale, soft knees fold forward. Take a breath or two here. Invite some softness into the knees, some length into the spine. And inhale, come all the way up to standing. Reaching the arms up here. Exhaling, coming back to center. One more time for that chair pose, placing the block between the two thighs, giving that block a little squeeze, creating our solid foundation, and sink back into chair pose. Hands can be at the heart, they could be on wall or chair or whatever you like for balance. And start to find length through the tailbone, length through the crown of the head, keeping the chest open, keeping the spine long. An option to add that twist, squeezing the thighs towards one another, twisting towards the left. Hands can be at heart center. Torso stays long. So again, continuing to reach crown of the head and tailbone in opposite directions. Coming back through to center. Feel free to stand up here at center. Take hands to the low back, lift the chest. Get a little stretch. And then exhale, coming back into chair pose. Length through the spine. And take that twist in the opposite direction. Reaching hips equally back. Length through the torso. Length through the spine. Couple breaths here. And coming back to center, releasing the block, standing up nice and tall. We'll step our right foot back now into warrior one. So feet are going to be just a little bit wider on the width of the mat, kind of like how they were in lunge position. Just make sure you're not crisscrossed or kind of walking a tightrope. That makes it pretty tricky for balance. Your right toes can be turned ever so slightly towards the top of the mat, and we'll lunge into that left knee. Just like we did earlier in our standing mountain pose, think about, we'll start from the bottom up. So think about taking that right heel and plugging it down onto the mat, getting a stretch through the calf muscle, getting some activation through the glute muscles and hamstring muscles. Drawing the legs isometrically towards one another as if you were hugging a giant block between the two thighs, giving you a solid foundation. And then finding that slight lift of the chest. Chest kind of pushes into the block. Left knee stacked on top of left ankle. And then keeping all of that and reaching the arms up overhead. Elongating through the neck. Maybe inviting a bit of softness into the jaw and the face. Taking a few breaths here. And then we'll straighten through that front left knee. Taking the block now so that it is at the low back. You can have your hands with thumbs closest towards you, have your hands holding onto the block and find a lift in the chest, drawing the block down with the legs. And then beginning to hinge forward into pyramid pose. Perhaps just a bit of softness in the front left knee. Spine is long, chest stays open as you hinge. Neck stays in line with the spine, so no need to look up. Breathing here, getting a stretch through the hamstring muscles on that left side. Inviting any softening to occur in the face, any areas that don't need to be holding on to tightness or tension. And on the next inhale, using your core and the strength from the legs to come all the way back up to standing. We'll take that block once again and place it at the heart. This time, the thumbs are facing towards you, pinkies are facing away from you, elbows are about kind of level with the block. As they face out, you can take your stance a little bit shorter. We're going to come into warrior three. Now, if you don't want to come to warrior three or don't feel comfortable coming into warrior three this way, please feel free to release the block and grab a hold of whatever you need for support. Taking that right leg back, we're hinging at the hip, hugging in, pressing the hands into the block, just providing a little more squeeze for ourselves can sometimes help with balance. Right heel reaches back, crown of the head reaches forward, chest stays open, try not to collapse through the front body. Taking your time, if you stumble out a little bit, just coming back in when you're ready. And then tipping back upright. You can feel free to release the block, maybe give the hands a little shake out. A few shoulder rolls here, releasing any tension in the upper body. And then picking that block back up. We're going to take the left foot back into warrior one now. So chest rotates forward, block faces the front of the mat. You've got your lunge in your right knee. Isometrically hugging the thighs towards one another, towards the center of the mat. Rotating the chest forward, drawing the shoulder blades down towards one another. And then perhaps lifting up, reaching the arms up towards the sky. Your back left toes are facing towards the top of the mat. I didn't mention that before. Lunges in the right knee and maybe providing yourself with a little more lift through the chest. Perhaps even taking the gaze upward. Feeling length through both sides of the body. And then coming back towards center, taking that block to the low back or kind of behind you, rotating the shoulder blades towards one another, lifting the chest, and then beginning to hinge forward. If you need to switch up your stance a little bit, feel free. Take some softness into that right knee. Length through the neck. Length and space in both side waists. And just breathing here, noticing what you notice. Adjusting where adjustments are needed. Trusting yourself. And on the next inhalation, using the strength of the legs, the core, coming all the way back upright. Taking the feet a little closer together for the transition, hugging the block, and we'll come into warrior three here. So another option for warrior three that I didn't mention on the other side is you can leave the big toe planted down for more stability if you don't want to hold onto a wall or a chair. You can have it a little lower, a little higher. Actively rooting as best as possible through all sides of the standing foot. Breathing here. It's coming back upright. We'll let go of that block for a little while. We're going to come into a few more balance poses. Standing up nice and tall here. And taking your left knee, we'll hug it in towards the chest. You can take ankle circles if you want. You can hold on to a wall, block, chair, table. Just make sure it's something sturdy. Feel free to move your ankle in any direction, spread out the toes a little bit. Maybe take it side to side a bit. And then we'll take that left knee away from the body, opening up here. Right arm can reach out towards the right. You could have the right hand on your hip, or you could be holding on to something. And then feel free to step out for your transition, or feel free to come into star pose, reaching the limbs, tipping over a bit towards the right, engaging the oblique muscles. If you want to reach the arms more up overhead, that's going to be a bit more challenging for the core. Taking your time here. When you're ready, releasing down from that, resetting yourself, plugging the feet down onto the mat, and we'll go ahead and grab our right shin, hug it in towards the chest, lengthen up through the crown of the head. Take those ankle circles if you'd like to. Maybe take the foot and wave it side to side, spread the toes out. Point and flex. And then taking that knee away from the body. Your left hand can reach out towards the left if you'd like. Standing up tall. Gazing at a focal point. And then choosing how you want to make your transition. If you want to come out completely and then come into star pose, or if you want to just come directly into star pose. This is one that they say it's kind of like you're between two planes of glass or between two walls. So you're trying not to be forward too much or back too much. And releasing from that, coming back to center, we're going to come into palm tree. So hands can be at your sides if you'd like, feet are about hip width distance or even a little bit closer. And we'll elevate onto the balls of the feet and come back down. So taking that just a couple of times, lifting and lowering. And then adding on, if you'd like to, you can reach the arms up, coordinating the upper and lower body movements, inhaling, reaching up, and exhaling, taking the heels back down. Arms and heels up, and then coming back down. And then adding on one more thing, we'll take that block between the thighs. I found that this can be really helpful in this pose, in this movement. So squeezing the block, engaging the core, hugging everything inward, core, thighs, glutes, everything hugs in inward, and then elevate up to the balls of the feet, squeezing the glutes, the thighs, the core, and lowering back down. Maybe taking a little pause up at the top, and lowering down, just doing your best. Feel free to hold on to a wall, a chair. And releasing down from that, coming up to the top of the mat. We're going to make our way down to a seated position. Yes, I think I'll try facing this way and see how that goes for now. Bringing the feet wide, sitting up nice and tall, perhaps closing the eyes here, finding length through the torso, so picking that rib cage up and away from the pelvis. Feet are nice and active, toes reach up towards the sky. And we'll come into a forward fold. We'll walk the hands forward in any amount to keep the feet nice and active. Elongate through the neck, keep that length through the torso. Maybe invite a bit of a sway into the upper body, continuing that intention of letting go of anything that's not serving you right now. Any thoughts, any tightness. See if there's any amount of letting go that can occur. And walking back upright as you're ready. We'll take our left foot and fold it in towards the inseam of the right leg. And for some of us, that knee kind of sticks up. It's another opportunity to use the block if you'd like to just tuck it underneath the knee for more support. If you have a strap and want to use it, feel free to use your strap and loop it around the ball of the right foot. Sit up nice and tall. Elongate, especially through the left side waist, and then begin to hinge at the hip, folding forward over the right leg. Rotating the chest to square with the right leg, elongating the spine. Encouraging the left knee down. This can be a nice stretch for the QL on that left side. And coming back upright, taking the left hand kind of off to the side, but behind, and reaching the right arm up and over, rotating the chest up, open, lifting, perhaps elevating up onto the left shin, opening up through the whole front body. And exhaling, coming back down towards center. You can take that left knee and hug it in towards the chest. And then take that left hand behind you as you twist towards the left with a lengthened spine, all the way from the tailbone through the crown of the head. Rotating back to center. Take that left leg out. Sole of the right foot towards the inseam of the left leg. You can take that block underneath the knee if it's elevated. Flex the left foot, use a strap or not. And hinge in any amount over the left leg. Keeping the chest rotated down towards the left leg. Inviting length into the spine. Softness into the face, the jaw, the brow. Coming back upright. Here you can take your right hand behind you, lift your left arm up, get some lift and openness through the left side of the body. And perhaps elevate up, lifting the hips up off of the mat. Getting a deep stretch through the whole front of the body, the frontal hips, chest, side waist. And exhaling, coming back down, taking that left leg forward, right knee hugs in towards the chest, sit up nice and tall. And then we'll take that twist over towards the right with a lifted chest, lengthened spine. Continuing to plug the hip bones down, reach the crown of the head up. And exhaling back to center, swinging the legs around. We'll take our block down as we come down onto the mat. Taking the feet just a little closer towards you, bending the knees. We're going to prepare for bridge pose, placing the block between the two thighs I think it's one final time. Connecting the whole back body down onto the mat, so maybe even lifting the hips and setting them back down. Plugging the shoulder blades down onto the mat, palms of the hands, back of the head. And then beginning to articulate the spine up into bridge pose. So this is a nice way to keep the feet about hip width distance apart. Keep the legs pretty even. Engage the glutes and hamstring muscles by giving that block a slight squeeze. And then articulating the spine all the way back down onto the mat. We'll remove the block and hug the knees in towards the chest. You can take the palms of the hands to the kneecaps and circle the knees open, back to center. Hug them in, take them open, push them away, back in, and back up towards the chest. So just finding kind of that full range of motion, bending and lengthening the elbows, circling the knees, circling the hips, and then reversing direction of that circle. And releasing back down onto the mat. If you want to take a supported bridge pose, you could take the block and place it underneath the hips. Finding a comfortable spot for that block so that the tailbone lifts, provides a little space, a little release in the low back. And we'll come back to our resting point. You can certainly take another stretch, another adjustment, grab a blanket, whatever you need to do to be comfortable. This is just one option for your resting pose. Hands can come to the belly. You could come to your sides. We're finishing just like we started. Bringing the attention to the sensations. Drawing everything we can to this present moment. Feeling the breath in the body. Points of contact with the mat. We'll just spend a few moments here in quiet. I have a short quote to share with you from Socrates while you're here in this quiet space. It says, care for your psyche, know thyself. For once we know ourselves, we may learn how to care for ourselves. And so taking a moment to seal in those words, sealing in that which is supportive to you. And then perhaps transitioning to a seated position, or perhaps staying where you are for a while longer. I'd like to thank you for sharing your practice and your positive energy with each other and with me today. Namaste.